Like that. Feel free to ask. Okay. So what I'm going to do is share with you, first of all, the procedure of road tripping. I'm a famous road tripper way back, and these are some of the routes I've taken across the country over the last 12 years.
Steady on it, buddy. That's in Orwell.
Perspective. So you can see I'm kind of missing the Pacific Northwest. I did that back in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s. I haven't been back out there since. But over the last 12 years, I have managed to make it from East Coast to West Coast, and concentration in the South and the Four Corners region, which is what we're going to focus on today. But before we do that, I thought I'd just give you a few things about road tripping the way I do it. One of the things, I always travel on off season. I don't travel in the summer very much, so I don't have to contend with crowds and things like that. And I'll usually start with the Weather Channel, not this particular map. I have a picture of it, I put it up here. To get the 10-day forecast out, so I know what I'm getting into, and that's been absolutely invaluable. Going to places like Newfoundland, where it rains a lot, and I remember the first time I went there, and I knew it, and every person I ran into, boy, you picked a good time to come up here. We've had like 5 days without rain, you know, and I didn't want to say, well, I knew that. But anyway, so that's part of the preparation. Preparation. No, I'm going to have to find that. Where's that? I'm not finding my pointer.
Oh, put it on the. It's not a pointer; it's a mouse. So you have to actually use it on the
on
lectern.
The surface.
Yeah. There you
there
go.
Okay.
If only.
Bear with me. Click. Okay, and there's the machine. And, this is in the Midwest. We're halfway out to where we're going. It's my cruise mobile. It cruises at about 80 miles an hour, less than 3,000 RPM. So it's still getting, believe it or not, 37 miles to the gallon, going 80 miles an hour. Unless I'm bucking a headwind, of course, which does happen, then it'll bring it down to 30 or something like that. So that's the vehicle, and I travel very lightly. I have a little soft suitcase about yay big, and a tent, or sometimes I camp a little bit. Okay, and I like to leave early in the morning at dawn, at least for the first day. And usually it's easier to do that once a morning trip. That's my trusty little one-man tent. I bought it on my way to Newfoundland, and I bought it at LLB's in Maine on the way up. And when I got to the first campsite, I had no idea how. I'd never set it up before. It was dark, so I had to leave the headlights on the car to set it up and so forth. But it comes in handy. It's very hard to get in and out of because it's so small. It's only about 3 feet high, one person. But it serves in a pinch. And otherwise, I use motels, and mostly the chain ones. I prefer Motel 6. You can't go wrong with that. I found mom and pop motels in the Midwest off the interstates are not a good idea because they're old, and if you worry about bed bugs, that's where you're going to get them. But a chain, that'll kill them. If anybody ever reported that, it had to be the end. So they're very, very ridiculous. I've never had any problems with cleanliness, and some pretty run-down old Motel 6s, like in Virginia and so forth. But that Loves are the travel the centers. If you travel up from the Midwest to the West, you see Loves and somebody knows. Remember the names of some of the other ones. And then anyways, when I get tired, I look for a motel. I never make reservations. And when I get hungry, I go to eat. And sometimes I find an interesting place like this, which is down in Virginia, and it's a copy of small regional hamburger place from the 50s, as we saw it. But I also use other chains, you know, like Bob Evans and Cracker Barrel. Those are, you can kind of count on those as a good food, you know, the chain. Otherwise, I look for local places, and you never know what you're going to run into, you know. And, you get some very interesting food. This is somewhere in Kansas.
Doubles as a jail, right?
And while we're out in Kansas, some of the scenery in western Kansas,
Well, right, see, I knew it was coming out, yeah.
where it gets a little flat. And then finally, over the Rocky Mountains, that's always fun, that's Loveland Pass, which is over 11,000 feet if you get on, I forget what the route number is, 6, I think, and get off of Interstate 70. Otherwise, if you stay on 70, you'll go through a tunnel, which cuts off about 500 feet elevation. So.
What month was that, Joe?
That was in, it was in spring, I think it was April, something like that. But that, it'll be like that up until May sometimes, at that elevation. And then finally, you get down into the, towards the Colorado Plateau and in the typical southwest canyon lands and so forth. Very dry. It's so different. I love it because of the low population density, and it takes a little getting used to in terms of lack of trees. You don't see trees, but you see lots of rock outcrops, and you can see the color of the rock. You look at the Green Mountains, you can't see the rock. You see green trees. You know,
that's amazing that stays up there.
what's that?
That-
All the,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's the way
Balance,
the weather's,
yeah.
yeah. This is taken in southeastern Utah, and this is Arches National Park, just for local scenery. Okay, now we're down to the area we're going to look at, and we're going to look at it somewhat of a historical perspective. This is the area of the Four Corners. The area in blue is the area in which the so-called, I'm all wet.
I saved you from this.
Oh,
I didn't want to interrupt.
thank you.
He's not a house trained
That's
yet.
okay.
He's not a house trained
It's,
yet.
it's going to keep me cool.
I just came from the senior center, so.
Anyways, you may have heard of the
It's a Pueblo life, you know.
the Pueblo Indians, so-called, in the Southwest. Okay. Well, these are the ancestors of the Pueblo Indians, and they were called, up until fairly recent, the Anasazi, which is actually a Navajo name for them, like, you know, the strange people or something like that. And it's more common today that anthropologists and historians call them the ancestral Pueblo. Okay, and this is their culture area, like centered on the Four Corners, the blue area, and it's not a uniform culture. There are many, many different ethnic groups and different languages, but they do share a whole bunch of common cultural traits, one of which is the living arrangement in pueblos, which are like apartment buildings linked together, which dates back to about 800 or 700 AD, 500, somewhere around there. They started developing that pattern. And these are some neighboring culture groups. We're going to see one group from the Sinagua, which is down here in central Arizona, just a little south of Sedona. Okay, so that's the culture area. And I do have copies of these that okay, this run off, so if you want any of these, see us afterwards. Okay, so that's the history of the area. And the first place we're going to visit is a place called Chaco Canyon. Chaco Culture Area is a national park, and excuse me, in the middle of nowhere, off of Route 550 in northwestern New Mexico. And some of you have traveled that road. It's a very interesting. It's 21 miles. The first 6 miles or so is a county highway, and it's paved. and then after that you turn off onto another highway, which is paved for another mile or two, and then it's dirt for the rest of the 17 miles. And it's either dusty, if it's not raining, it's dry, it's dusty, and full of potholes and whatnot, and ruts that were frozen when it was wet, and the cars went through and left the tracks. And then when it's wet, it's impossible, you know, it's just all mud. So it's kind of hard to get to. But it's worth, it's worth doing, because Chaco is the first of the sort of heyday of the ancestral Pueblo culture. It was the largest, well, not quite a city, we call it a large town, I guess, by current standards, but very big structures. The main Pueblo we'll be looking at in a moment. Just, you get some idea of the loneliness in the road. There's no, for that 21 miles, there's nothing, not a single house, not a ranch, nothing, just what you see here.
Did you have any dust storms while you were there?
No, I had rainstorms, you'll see, I think, no, maybe later. I ran through some squalls coming. You're looking west, and that's Fajada Mesa. So when you can see that coming in, you know you're getting closer to the park visitor center, which is around this area. But, oh, and then just a little bit about the terminology for the topographer, if you're not familiar. The ridge, or the flat top ridge over here, that's a mesa. And this, a piece of it that broke off like a little island is called a butte. So it's like mesa and butte topography. And the elevation here is about, I don't know, 4,000 feet above sea level. So this is a high, you're on the Colorado Plateau. There's a approaching rainstorm, but you might have seen dust coming from the west, similar to that. Okay, and then we get to the park, the visitors center for Chaco culture, and this, you might want to take a look at this. I can read it for you if you want. The San Juan River Basin, northwestern New Mexico, is a vast empty land. You saw that with a few trees and very little water. Yet 200 years before the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde and Cayenta, people were built at Chaco. The ancestral Pueblos reached a higher level of architectural development than that of any other of their neighbors. The famous towns of Pueblo, Bonito, which we'll start with, actually Chaco, we'll start with, and then some of the others. Tell a part of a complex story. So these ruins were abandoned in the by 1150 or 70, somewhere around there, in the 12th century. And this is a big mystery about all the peoples. If you go to, I remember when I first went to Mesa Verde and saw this incredible development under the cliff, and then all this mystery about what happened to vanished people. They didn't vanish. They're all over the place, and their descendants still live there. They don't live on the Colorado Plateau in this area anymore. They live further to the east in the valley of the Rio Grande River, and it's in a little further south over the Mogollon Rim, which is the southern rim of the Colorado Plateau. But anyways, archaeologists tend to see things in a micro, like under a microscope, so they can't relate to the broader world. And so they're trying to explain this phenomena when there's other related phenomena all around, and they can't see that just down the road is some people that are the same, and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, I digress. So once you get into the canyon, this is looking north, the mesa, north and south, and so the Chaco Canyon runs east to west. This is Chaco, which is a town occupied from 950 to the 1250s. It's a sacred site. The term Great House applies here in Chaco Canyon, and these are pueblos which are up to 3 stories high, maybe a little more, in some cases, and as many as 700 rooms. You know, in one settlement, we'll see that in Pueblo Bonito in a little bit. So they were really big, but they were atypical. They weren't common. All the valley is just full of ruins. If you go up and down the valley, small villages, maybe there were, you know, little pueblos with 12 rooms, you know, and a couple of families living there, and they were scattered all over the place. But in a few places, this Chacoan phenomenon developed, got very, very big. So Chaco, okay, and we're going to start with the ruins of a common architectural feature of the ancient Puebloans, and even today. It's called a kiva, which is a circular underground room. This is, of course, the roof is missing on this. And this was for sacred rituals, but also sort of all kinds of community activities and things were carried on in these. And they vary in size, but all Pueblo villages have these, and the bigger ones have many. And we'll see. The round poles were for posts holding up the roof, which is quite intricate. And usually some of these are symbolic links to the underground. Spiritually, story of origins as people came out of the ground. Sipapo was a name for a hole in the middle of a kiva, for example. And the reason for that probably is that most archaeologists I've read anyway suggest is because of the preoccupation with water. There's no water out here. It gets, you know, from 8 to 12 inches of rain a year. And so there are no major rivers flowing all year round. And so knowing where the groundwater is and where the water table is high is everything in terms of building these villages. So that's, you know, if you go down, it's good. You know, that's where the life comes from. Water comes from below. Okay, and this is part of the remains of Chaco Canyon Pueblo, multi-storied, and you can see some of the masonry work there, which is quite interesting. Very broad at the base, and then it tapers at the top, because, you know, the weight of the rock is very heavy, so you have to make the base holding up the first, you know, second floor, third floor, very, very broad. And much of this is stonework, and archaeologists can date and from different time periods on the way the masonry is done, for example. And I keep forgetting to point it there. Okay, so then you go on to Pueblo Bonito, which this does not do it justice. I took this picture because I wanted to get the sign, but this is the beginning of it. This is the one that has 700 rooms. It's massive, absolutely massive. And you can see some of the cliff back in the 30s fell off the face here, and some of the big boulders crashed into the north wall of the Pueblo. I keep here on your screen.
Hit the left side.
Yeah.
Or make sure you hit the left side.
No,
Not
well,
the right side.
yeah, but you have to point it at the, but, you know, okay. Anyways, this is kind of an overview, sort of looking east, and you can see the boulders that crash down here, and you're up to 3 stories high in the back. It is just overwhelming. I saw this guy walked out there, and just went like this after a while, looking around. You know, it is kind of overpowering, and my picture doesn't really do it justice.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
How did they do
Those
it?
round things are all over, right?
What, the kivas?
There were
Yes,
several.
yes. I should point out, I should have got a diagram of it, but it's laid out like in like a D, the letter D, and so the back rooms arc around like this, and then there's sort of a plaza in the inside of the D, and that's where this whole series of kivas are located. And in some places, the kivas were built in big square rooms. In others, they're freestanding, so to speak, underground. But you can see some other features here I wanted to point out. These are vigas, the very large beams that would come across to support the roof, and then I forgot the term for the smaller ones that cross it diagonal like that. So it's like lattice work, and then they can put mud over that, for the floor to build up. And you'll see that in the Pueblo, what they call Pueblo revival architecture, like in modern Taos, downtown Taos, New Mexico, for example, all through northern New Mexico, that style is used.
Joe, is that an oven?
No, that's, I think that's where some of the stuff, the rock fell down in the back, but that's either a window or doorway, and they recognize, I didn't get all of them, but there are 4 different types of doorways connecting rooms, and that would be called a high sill doorway. You can see it's been patched up here a little bit, so I don't know what's going on. But anyways, let me see if I can get it. That's just a close-up of the Viga. One of the interesting things about Vigas, there are no trees here. So you gotta go to the nearest mountains where pine trees grow, and sometimes that's 40 miles away. So how on earth these people lug 50-foot long, that diameter log? I have no idea, but they did it. And they anyways, very interesting. Okay, there's I got preoccupied with the boulders falling down on it. But you can see some more of the doorways over here. There's a closer. This is a high sill. There are some the doorway goes right to the floor, and then there are others that are T-shaped. And the T is supposed to have some. Nobody knows for sure what the symbolism or the reason behind the T's. Everything from slowing down intruders so they can't rush through with their armor and everything on, to spiritual shape that has to do with underground wells and so forth. But anyways, and I unfortunately don't have. But I'll tell you, going from one room to another, and this for a guy like me, with my joints pretty stiff, it was hard getting through those things, lifting my feet to stand on this and then walking across and sitting down.
On the other side.
Another room.
Oh.
Yeah, they just go on and on. Okay, this is just for perspective here geographically. We started off at Chaco Canyon here in northwestern New Mexico. That's the oldest, and Chaco, the main, the canyon itself, of course, has been occupied for over thousands of years. But the great houses, as they call them, which Chaco, Pedro, and Bonito are examples. Okay, started about 900 AD or so here, and they were in their peak around 1125 or so in Chaco. Okay, so that's a time frame, and then you'll see that the post-Chacoan sites. These come after Chaco, not by much. Aztec, which is the next place we'll be looking at, is somewhere around 1150 AD. It hits its peak, and so forth. And then Mesa Verde, 1200 AD is when that peaks. So you see they get a little later. And they all have influences architecturally and pottery-wise and so forth that can be traced back to Chaco. So that's what the Chaco phenomenon is kind of all about here. And just for the other geography sequence here, all of this from here, that's the Colorado Plateau. Once you get over here, Taos, New Mexico, you're off the plateau. This is the edge of the plateau. You're in this is the Rio Grande River, okay? And that's where most of the people who left here wound up, okay? So by 1300 AD, all of these major places were pretty much abandoned. But on the other hand, and nobody knows for sure what caused the abandonment. There are all kinds of theories on that, environmental droughts, but droughts happen here all the time. So the people, I've read historians and anthropologists who say that, well, that's a regular feature of living here, that you build a little Pueblo someplace and you have 10 or 15 good years, raise a family or two, and then it gets too dry and then you move on. You know, and then who knows, 50 years later you might come back, you know. So that's very common, and it's really not a mystery, okay. So there are environmental factors. There are others who say that it was due to surrounding hunting and gathering, nomadic people like the Navajo, you know, who were attacking them, and some drove them off. That's another feature. And then finally, and more recently, there's a religious feature, because as the anthropologists will tell you, in the process of human migration, there are push factors which cause people to leave a place, but there have to be pull factors that pull them to the place they're going to go, and that's never been addressed. But one of the pull factors which developed in this area in the 1300s is the Kachina phenomenon. You've heard of the Kachina doll. Kachina is like a cult. It's a religious thing, and it has a whole aura of gods, different gods, the rain god, et cetera. And there are certain ceremonies that go with it, and masks and that sort of thing. And so that may be another factor that pulled people off and so at least to wind up in this particular area. They may have been driven off for environmental reasons or for, you know, fighting with neighbors and so forth, but they came here perhaps because of that factor.
I wonder which San Juan came first, San Juan there or San Juan, Puerto Rico?
Oh, this is not a town. San Juan is the name of the river. This is the San Juan River and its tributary, so it's not. Well, that's these names obviously are Spanish. I mean, they're from Mexico now. Spanish came up here in the 1500s.
Oh, okay, so that's.
Yeah, they came all through this area. They didn't see much here, but they came up the Rio Grande, and you know, these pueblos were all inhabited at that time.
So during Chaco's heyday, Taos didn't have a Pueblo there yet?
A good question. Taos, I'm trying to think of the other. Yeah, well, anyway. Acoma, we'll see that later. Acoma, Sky City. Those two pueblos are currently occupied pueblos go way back. And they both claim to be the oldest continually inhabited towns in the United States. And they go back to about 1,000 years ago. So you can say that for Taos, but you can also say that for Acoma as well. Okay, so we'll leave Chaco to Aztec ruins, which is only 50 miles north here. And the term Aztec goes back to, you know, they were fighting between early archaeologists back in the late 1800s about the influence from Central America, you know, and the Aztec culture and so forth. And there isn't really any direct connection, but so that's where the name Aztec comes. And it's the name of a town which is currently occupied. It's a population of about 6,000 in southwestern Colorado. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not. I'm ahead of myself. Northwestern New Mexico, right near the Colorado border. Okay, but this I had never heard of this one before, and when I went there, just kind of blew my mind. You can just see its proximity to Chaco here again on that. Yeah. Oh, what am I doing? How did I even do that? Okay, so and here again, you can't really see because I don't have an aerial view, but D shape, the arc of the D goes that's the back wall there, and then the straight line would be across here, and these are where the kivas are. And this one is smaller, it only has like, I don't know, 300-400 rooms or something like that, compared to 700 for Pueblo Bonito, which is down in Chaco Canyon. But again, multi-storied, and you can see the design of the stonework here is different. The blocks of stone are bigger, and they're laid differently. So those are some of the cultural differences between groups here. And one of the interesting, this is along the north wall, the outer D, a whole series of big rooms with the doorways. And I love these doorways because they're the low sill, and you can just walk right through. You don't have to feel like. And a very high ceiling, and I forgot to mention that back in Bonito where it all began. And these were not living spaces. That's one of the things that, of the 700 rooms, for example, in Bonito, very few of them were actually lived in. And the population of that might have been only 200 people living there. Much of it, they're not sure, but a lot of it was perhaps ceremonial, storage, that sort of thing. But it was a show of splendor, and there are burial sites located nearby with a lot of things that indicates that there's, the beginnings of the class structure.
What did they use to hold the stones together?
That's what I was gonna say, there isn't even cement.
Yeah, well, it's adobe, mud. Yeah. Remember, adobe comes in with the Spanish, though, later. You see that in the, did I do it again? Panic. There we go. Okay. I wanted to show, this is the outside, so the north faces out here in this long wall with the room doors lined up, okay, and then you come around the corner, you're getting back towards the straight line. But you're actually through halfway up the first story. In other words, the footpath is here, but the bottom of the room inside is down here. This is the roof. And this freaked me out because I linked it because the doorway was just around the corner. Come out there, and the beams holding up the roof of that room are the original. And this is what it looks like outside. I mean, it's just grass growing there. So, it kind of works pretty good. And it also tells us how valuable it is here. Okay, and that's just another shot of the kiva. But one of the unusual things that really freaked me out at Aztec was, I can't remember the name of the guy, I can't remember the name anyway, but we did the archaeology on this back in like the 1920s, 30s in Aztec, with a grant from National Geographic and so forth, had a lot of money behind him, actually built a reproduction kiva. So, whoa! I should have reworked this. Okay. Right. So that's the reproduction kiva from the outside, and there's the inside. And it's quite interesting. What you can't see, and I'm not sure myself, I'm still researching a lot of this, is all the rooms in all those that we've seen today, that Bonito and so forth, were they all plastered? I'm not sure. I think they were, okay? Plaster's gone, but this is what it would have looked like then, which is very different from seeing the stonework that we saw before. It's much more polished and so forth and so on. So,
You think they were on the outside too?
that's an even better question. I don't know. I can't.
Nobody knows?
No, I can't say. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows, but I haven't come across it in my research yet. Okay, here's the thing about the roof. This is the roof on that kiva. These are like, what, 40 feet long? These are the vigas, and then these are the cross ones, and then you got that, like in between them there's mud on top of that. there's a lot of upkeep to these, but also a lot of work.
Because it's so dry out there, so you want stuff.
Yeah, well, that helps a lot, obviously, you know. And now we're going to, we're into Colorado now, and if you're going north, and if you turn right, you go to Mesa Verde, which I tried to get in on this trip, but it was in March, and the road was